Titans, short week for them, coming off Monday Night Football against the Cowboys. 28-14 was the final there.
Yeah.
First and foremost, I think most media outlets play up big the fact that it's a short week for them, Monday to Sunday. For you, as a former player, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Does that play into it?
I'm really glad you led with that, Courtney, because it's something I've been thinking about a lot this week, and something I don't think the Patriots got enough credit for last week. And there's plenty of ways to give them adulation for beating the Packers, but having the short week sucks. It really does, because you hear this. One of the things the Patriots have been really good about doing, they do it on Patriots.com a lot recently, where they'll throw out a video in the post sort of thing in the locker room, where Bill comes in, he gives you the final speech. You're on pins and needles. You've just won. You're waiting for one line. There's only one line you care about. It's see you Wednesday, which is the greatest thing in the world to hear on a Sunday, because it's like, I'm going, do whatever I want from Monday, Tuesday. You're still going to get a lift in. You're still going to get your game plan, all that stuff, but you don't have a regimen of meetings on Monday. But you don't get that alternative when you win on a Monday night. When you win on a Monday night, you know, whoo, I got to turn this around in 24 hours and get right back in here. It's tough. I hate short weeks. I mean, not to be a baby about every little thing, but you want to, the teams that have the little clearer path have a little easier week there. Now, that doesn't have a lot to do necessarily with how you perform on Sunday, unless maybe you get into a situation where it's a really unusually slow start, so you play way out of character early. That's easy to point back to that. Or you wear down late, and it's just because you had to get into a game plan really quickly, and sometimes guys get beat up. Maybe a few people go down earlier in games. It's hard to point a finger right to it, but it certainly is a factor. So the Patriots overcame that against the Packers, although in the Packers situation, it wasn't all sort of daisies there. They had to travel straight to the West Coast, then you have to travel all the way to the East Coast. So they had a lot of travel, even though they didn't have the extra day. In this situation, Titans have the short week, and you have to prepare on a short week, not just the physical portion, but mentally. And there's no more difficult prepare than preparing for Tom Brady's offense, because they do so much stuff.
Right.
And that's why time matters, because time is sort of shown in hours you can spend in video, in time you can spend game planning, in walkthrough time, quite frankly, where the Patriots have such a huge volume of plays. You would have to go through, imagine you're preparing this week, and you don't know a lot of the things that we don't know right now. You and I are about to dive into this script, and we're not exactly sure how much Sony Michel is going to do. We're not exactly sure if the Cordarrelle Patterson runs.
We're not Bill Belichick.
We're not. I mean,
shocking.
You can tell.
Yeah.
So, but we don't necessarily know what Gronk's role is going to be, or even if he's going to be active. So imagine the Patterson stuff, the James White packages, the different configurations of the 3 or 4 receivers they have. There are so many unknowns when you're preparing for the Patriots, and they're a group that uses half a dozen different personnel groups on the day. So it's really tough anyway. Then you take away a day.
All right, well, Titans short week, but they are at home. So the Pats are flying out to Nashville to go to Mike Vrabel's new home. For him, he is a first-year head coach for them. Bill Belichick has talked a lot about Vrabel this week with media, praising him, singing his praises. You have a special connection with him because you used to play with him, and he's a friend. Also, Dean Pease for you, a close connection there. So let's start with Vrabel. What did you see about him that would make him such a good coach?
So my first experience with Mike, and remember, Mike and I played the exact same position, so I essentially backed up Mike, for the 6 years I was here with him. 5, I guess it was. But so Mike and Willie play opposite one another. Willie McGinnis and Braves. And this first year in 2000 with Coach Belichick, Mike wasn't here. He was still in Pittsburgh at that time. And Chris Slade had just retired or whatever it was after the 2000 season. I'm not sure if he filed his papers, but Chris is out here, and he was a legendary Patriot for years and years, but was towards the end of his career. So Willie's the other side. I'm thinking I got an off-season opportunity to move into this spot and maybe play, start at the other outside linebacker. But I'm a pretty young player at that time, just a second-year guy. They go out in free agency and get Mike. So, right when you see it, you're a little salty, and you're like, oh, damn it, this guy's going to now take my spot. And he wasn't starting in the other place. He was a rotational guy and a really good teams player and a great rusher like Mike was at Ohio State. But Mike came in here, and Rob Ryan was our position coach, and Robbo had, we'd go out to the old bubble. Now, there's a nice bubble there now. I wouldn't even call it a bubble. It's a nice indoor facility. We used to legitimately have a bubble. I sort of got it. It looked like you could pop it. It was just,
Boston College had that.
It was not nice. But a little lower ceiling. But anyway, so we've just signed this guy in free agency, Mike Vrabel, and I know the name a little bit from his Big Ten days. There's obviously a stud there. But I'm not sure exactly what's going on. They've called us out to the bubble, and he puts Mike and I opposite one another. And this is like in May or April, or there's no football going on. And I think we both had helmets on, and we had us doing one-on-ones. And I was the young up-and-coming guy, and I think Vrabel is a couple years older than me, and he's had to be thinking, what the hell am I doing here? What do they have me doing at this crazy place in New England? And I'm going probably a little too hard because I'm kind of a go-get-it guy at that time, trying to prove something. And I just remember he and I kind of didn't talk about that. And then obviously he rolls into his awesome career that he has and ends up being an amazing player for us. And we would joke about that years later, like, dude, what were you doing on that day? Like, what was up your butt? And I'm like, I didn't know what they were doing. He didn't know either. He's like, is this what you guys do every day? So that was a long, winding story. Basically, just to say that, we were connected kind of initially. I played a rotating position. I played behind Mike for all those years, so I really got to see what he can do and know what he's all about. He's a really cerebral player. When you're on the field with Mike, you're in a huddle with Mike, he's one of the guys that as the huddle breaks, a lot of formation stuff will go on, and he's the guy that can kind of find the one thing that's going to be the key to the play. That's where we always kind of thought he'll be a good coach. He knows how to dissect. He knows how to filter out the BS, get to the stuff that matters most. Now, pulling this sort of back to center where this would be relevant for today's game, he's had a couple swings, several swings now, because he was defensive coordinator in Houston. And then even as a position coach, you get a lot of input when you're going to go play a former team of yours. He's built or been a part of building several game plans already against the Patriots. So he's been sort of down this road. I don't think it changes demonstrably today just because he gets a chance to lead. When you're leading, you got to, you're doing both sides of the ball and special teams, all the personnel questions of the day. Putting together a game plan to beat the Patriots because he's had experience. He's done some pretty good swings already with that at Houston. It'll be pocket disruption, those kinds of things. But real briefly on Dean Pease, Dean is an awesome guy, an awesome man, great coach. We've all got a ton of respect for him. It was really savvy on Mike's part to bring him in immediately. It's like you're the young, fresh, new up-and-coming coach at Tennessee, but you go and get an old stable. And I think in Dean, you get cover 4, and that's important to know. He's not a huge pressure package guy, although he'll do some, but cover 4 matters because it was a concept that Belichick didn't run. And when Dean was brought in here from Kent State, it was in part to sort of institute the stuff that Dean did that we didn't know much about. Cover 4 is a big college concept. Cover 4 means you got 4 deep guys, basically the corners play on top of every route, the safeties play deep, and there's only 3 underneath defenders, and you match with that. I know that's a mouthful here just for a spoken show, but that's Dean is a guy that knows his stuff cold, and Mike's that way too. So they're a really nice pairing.
All right. Well, last week I think we talked a lot about offense. This week we're talking a lot about defense. Yeah. The Titans' #1 defense in the NFL. How did the Pats kind of take control of this?
Yeah, it's a challenge, and I think in part because now Mike when he was working with Houston, I think had better personnel up front to do what he would want to do. And hey, I'm going to mention a BC player here. Harold Landry, new guy, a top pick, second-round pick for the Titans, is a new, nice, fresh edge guy that can do some stuff for them. But if you look at what Mike was most successful in doing when they were disruptive in those couple of Houston times up here visiting the Patriots, it was with Jadeveon Clowney, with Watt, so you're dealing with some really high-end personnel that can move and get across people's face, get to the middle of the pocket, which is the most important thing against Brady. And he knows that, right? I mean, these aren't secrets. We talk about this literally every week. But Vrabel will be scheming up some ways, whether it be crossing people, or dropping people out that you don't expect to be, doing something funky on the front porch to try to get Tom flushed or to prevent him from stepping up. That's really the major concern. If you can give Tom that clean pocket now, we can stop the conversation. I think it probably went pretty well for them. So that'll be where most of his scheming energy, over guard to guard and center, trying to get some sort of confusion element there, putting guys in, dropping them out, which we saw the Packers have success with a little bit last week on just a couple plays. But if you take that away, you have the run game, and I think that'll be something that, as we go on here in the show, we'll need to talk a little bit more about. But if the Patriots are able to establish a run game, which they weren't quite they've never been so effective at doing something like that when they faced the Texans. Again, slightly different personnel, but his groups. Patriots have never, in my recollection, taken a heavy run game approach against those Texans defenses. You got Jarrell Casey on the inside, a pretty high-end player. Brian Rakpo, there's some really good players on the other side of the ball, but it is personnel-wise at least a notch down from Houston. Are they willing to go heavy with Michelle? Are they going back to the run game stuff? We don't know that. But if that's not the case, we'll look heavily to that. We'll talk about run game.
Okay, from first to worst. We talked a little bit about this before coming on camera, so I'm a little bit scared to go back into it. If you know Chatham, he talks a mile a minute and gets very fired up. This is going to be one of those moments. Malcolm Butler statistically ranks as the worst corner in the NFL. for you, you don't really agree with that. And, well, here we go.
I like it. That's a great way to tee it up. No, I don't know what stats and coverage they're not smart. So let's put it that way. You aren't targeted. I think let's start here from the start here. When you read a stat in a newspaper, on a blog, on a website, anything like that, when people quote how many times a defensive back was targeted, it's foolish. That's just not real. You don't target defensive backs. And again, you don't have to take my word for that. This is something I've asked Brady about in pre-production meetings in our preseason games over the years. So, hey, do you actually choose a defensive back? Say you've got like a weak sister, something over there going on, bad phrase, I shouldn't use that one, but a defensive back that you think is playing at a lower level. Are there occasions where you'll actually try to find him and send the ball there because of that person? Yeah, occasionally. It's not that it's not truthful that can happen. It's such a minute percentage that you should never explain all catches happening as targeting that defensive back. Doesn't make sense. It's not how it works. By and large, Tom Brady, it's not just the greatest like Tom. Most quarterbacks are dropping back. They're reading a coverage element, and in each coverage there are beaters. There are places where you go based upon where the coverage is. You have a 3-by-1 set offensively. You're going to try to send it back to the ISO part, or you're going to be picking someone. Your offense is going to be doing something, and you're sending it to the open guy. You're not pre-snap saying, "Where's the guy that some third party graded a certain way?" I mean, that's silly. That's literally not how it works. So we should never talk about defensive backs as being targeted. They're not targeted. To target something is a hunter with a deer and a part you're shooting on his body. That's targeting. You're literally choosing something. Quarterbacks don't target defensive backs, but on the rarest of occasions. So they target receivers who are open, or they target concepts that become open based on the coverage you give them. And so all that is sort of just to set the table and say that Malcolm Butler has gotten beat more than many people this year, more than anyone would expect. He's given up some big plays. That is absolutely factually true. But putting third-party grading aside, which shouldn't happen anyway with defensive backs, the one thing about that, you can even use last week's as example. In the Cowboys game, he gives up a 4-yard route down at the goal line. Touchdown. Technically, now Malcolm's given up another one of those stats. He's terrible, right? And I'm being facetious. He also gives up a double move out about the 30-yard line to Amari Cooper. So now he's giving up 2 touchdowns. He's terrible, right? Oh, get him out of the game, Mike. No, there were 60 other reps that dude took in the game, and he was pretty solid throughout the rest of that. And Vrabel was asked about this in his press conferences this week, and from the transcript, it was no. He was biting on a key that we'd sort of he's double move susceptible. He jumped the key, he was jumping a route that we had been keen on, gave up a play we didn't want him to, but is he going to be disciplined? Is he going to be demoted? No, of course not. Did you guys watch the other 60 plays he was in? Because he was really good. And that's how it is. So if you're going to go get an aggregate stat that looks down and says, well, he's had 7 of these this year, that's more than any other defensive back, he's the worst. That's stupid, because that's not how it works. You have to watch all the plays. And a lot of times, if you were really legitimately the worst defensive back in the league, you would not be thrown at. You know why? Because you'd get coverage help. You'd get safeties over the top of you. You'd have linebacker help because you're susceptible. If you're out there alone, you ain't the worst. You're probably very good, and even the really good ones in this league give up plays. He's in a funk. I think that's accurate. But if we want to bring this back to New England Patriot talk, the Patriots are going to drop back. They're going to find the open guy, and it isn't because of who is covering who.
Right.
Really important part on this, Courtney, and to sort of put a bow on this, the Titans are relatively limited as far as their depth chart with corners. It's Malcolm, it's Logan Ryan, who we know is another really good player, and their body type differences, and then they have a third corner who they use, but they're not really use their fourth corner a lot, certainly not a fifth corner. This is more of a safety-heavy team. Vaccaro is there now, came over from the Saints, good pickup for them, but I say that, and if the Patriots happen to see one of the Titans defensive backs get nicked up, out for a play, they don't typically go, their third corner doesn't cycle in. You're very more likely to see a safety, quite possibly. So it's a little different makeup over there. So I think you look at today's matchups and say, hey, why is Logan taking a certain guy? Well, because Logan's the 6'1" guy, a little bit longer. Malcolm, 5'10", more of an average height guy. He's a jump route, he's a steal guy, he's closer to maybe an Asante Samuel of old. But it's more matchup based, I think, why they do things. I certainly won't be going, Tom, where's Malcolm? You know, that whole thing. It's not true.
Okay, you feel better? That wasn't that bad.
You really weren't. No swearing.
You need to,
no swearing.
Yeah, that was good. All right, okay. Moving forward, Sony Michel expected to be back. How does this affect Cordero Patterson today?
I think the Cordero, it's been a challenge, Patterson packages live on. He got, I believe it was 10 rushes 2 weeks ago, 11 last week.
11 last week.
Yeah, something like that. So we certainly haven't risen to the level here where we're even talking about 20s and 25s. I think you could still easily find about that 10 number for Patterson, even with Michelle reintroduced to this thing. And I just think as a greater overall theme, independent of who you're going to give the ball to, especially since Michelle's back new from a knee. We'll be watching, has he got a big brace on? How and in what way is he limited? It wasn't surgical, but a lot of time that's the,
knees are scary.
Knees are scary. And it's the cutting stuff, right? People falling over it, the lateral movement can sometimes be affected there. Are there certain kind of runs they feel more comfortable with Michelle? Do they need to put him in some live situations to see him get tackled to feel comfortable? I just feel in situations like this when you haven't seen him, they've been practicing, they aren't tackling in practice, they may not know what he can handle any more than what he knows. He thinks he can, they think he can, but I don't think in those kinds of situations you just wipe off the old packages. I still think James White's going to be heavily involved. Could be a huge day for him as far as catching passes like always, but he still may be a traditional runner in the five-ish carry kind of spot. I think Patterson's plays live on because they really prove something with him. As much as anything, it continues to stress the other side. You could potentially have Michelle still in the game and Patterson motion back into the backfield as a decoy with Michelle and run traditional stuff with him, use him as a fullback or whatever you want to do. You have options here. I think it helps the other side if you eliminate some of your options. Keep them all alive.
We talked a little bit earlier about how last week we focused so much on offense. And when I say that, it really is we focused a lot on Aaron Rodgers.
Oh, yeah.
Aaron Rodgers and Marcus Mariota kind of have a similar, style of play. Mariota great on the ground. How do you think the defense game plan will be against Mariota? And do you think that it will kind of be the same as last week with Rodgers?
Yeah, a little bit, and I think Mariota runs better than Aaron does outside of the pocket. I think his burst's a little better. Maybe that's a part of Aaron's age, and then a part of the knee that he's dealing with as well. But this was not a native thought of mine. I didn't come up with this, so I have to credit. This is actually on in my athletic column this week. One of the commenters had said,
"Oh, credit to you."
Credit them, yeah. Credit, yeah. I got to
credit to you for crediting them.
Credit for the crediting, yeah. But mention Mitch Trubisky, and I think that's a better comp. They run very similar. They're similarly sized, and there's another element to their game that's beyond just how they run and the ways and places you saw Trubisky escape. Those would be the areas you're most concerned with Mariota. Mariota will leave outside the pocket in a relative hurry down low in the red zone. He will step up and relocate to throw or step up and just go. That's kind of his thing. This is not Russell Wilson, whatever it is, like reversing out kind of thing. It's not Deshaun Watson with the crazy athleticism out there. Mariota's a big, strong guy who can burst to the edge. Old phrase that my old coaches used to use, if he's even, he's leaving. So if you look at the edge of the defense and you see at any point Mariota sees even relationship, he goes. That's kind of his thing. But the reason the Trubisky thing also works for me, beyond just run style, they're similarly not so accurate in the intermediate game. And I think that's why we see Marcus Mariota as a guy you respect a lot. He's tough as hell. He's a big guy. He takes hits. He's not doing like the RG3 15 carry a game kind of guy, but he'll pull it down and take it in a tough spot, and he's not diving out of bounds necessarily. He has to take some hits with his body and does. But he's not the most accurate quarterback. And you look back to that old draft class, it was the big conversation was Jameis Winston and Mariota. Mariota lights the world on fire there in Oregon. Winston is a multi-Heisman candidate, wins it once down at Florida State. Winston's lost his starting gig now to Fitzmagic, and he's in part because of issues that he had at the collegiate level with interceptions, and that's really carried over for Winston in the pros. The thing that's carried over, in my view, with Mariota, he was a high completion percentage guy in college, but that was the scheme. It was everyone's wide open, someone's picked, you hit the open guy, and he runs 100 yards, and you get credit for a 100-yard pass even though you threw it 6. I think you see some limitations on him as hitting end cuts. He's a good quarterback, but he does not have an elite arm, and I think that limits him a little bit on what they're able to do with him. Beyond just who and how you feel about the quarterback, you got to look at the receivers, and Tennessee is banged up, but also one of the more mild sort of bottom 5 offenses in the NFL as far as who they got. They got a young up-and-comer in Corey Davis, a local product in Tajay Sharp that, UMass kid, but that's banged up and missed practice this week. And also Tawan, am I missing the name? Tawan Taylor, I believe? I think that's the other one. Courtney's looking at me with, why did you ask me, eyes? I'm sorry. But the point is, they're two receivers. They're number 2 and they're number 3. There it is, Twan Taylor. Thank you.
You had it.
I had it. I was in the neighborhood. TT. Hey, I call him TT. But, TT, he's their second and third receiver this week in an offense that only scores, 16.9 points a game, something like that this year, 16.8, somewhere in that range. Both of their second and third receivers didn't practice on Thursday, and then were limited on Friday. It's a pretty big deal when you already have an offense that struggles quite a bit. That
offensive struggles, but last week they
scored 28.
Great. Yeah, and they were great
28.
on third down.
Yeah, so they had 1 week where they put it together. Yeah. So was that the outlier, or was that their new mean kind of thing? I doubt it, because I always like to look back 4 weeks, and if you look back 4 weeks, there's also a game they got blanked just either 2 or 3 weeks ago with the Ravens, I believe it was. So this is an offense that can put up an egg in a minute. So again, we can wind this back to even the divisional game a year ago, right? So what's new and different offensively that you'd be facing that wasn't there? Corey Davis was there, but he's a rookie. You don't expect as much of him now. Now he's sort of grown into a little bit bigger role. But there's a bunch of people that aren't. Delaney Walker is on IR, out for the season. Rashard Matthews no longer on that team. Eric Decker not on that team. Those are your 3 big target guys in that game. And then unfortunately, Derrick Henry had to go wire to wire. And he's a kind of back. He's a big, bruising dude, but he's not a pass back necessarily. So it was a really smart move for Vrabel to go out and get Dion Lewis. That's a really nice add-in for them. But from the wide receiver group, those vets left, and the young guys are Tajay and TT, who are banged up this week. So they're an offense that already doesn't score a lot of points, that has either two of their second and third receivers as hobbled or maybe possibly not involved in this game. We don't know that until we get the inactives, and we're a little early here with our show. And then they lost the production from the tight end position. So they just have blockers there at that spot now. Not a heavily targeted position now with Delaney Walker gone. So it's kind of the quarterback that might scramble. It's Davis that might draw Stephon Gilmore. I don't like doing that where he's not going to go wire to wire with him. But it's kind of a pretty definitive one wide receiver key. And then Dion Lewis out of the backfield. And that's kind of it. Those are good players, but it's a limited pool that I think you can really hone in on.
Well, and all those players that you just mentioned are kind of star names that people in Massachusetts, Pats fans will know. You bring up TT, who maybe some Pats fans don't know. Anybody else that you think could really step up in this one that Pats fans should look out for?
I'm going to make the case for Tajay if he plays. So this is sort of hopefully not stepping on my toes here, because Tajay Sharp is a guy that I covered quite a bit. So maybe there's bias here than even bringing him up. But I'm presuming that he's able to go, and it was a lower body. I think it was ankle for him this week. But he's a guy that you don't want to overlook. He's a 6'3", I don't know if they call him 6'4", but he's a taller wide receiver, thin, goes up and makes plays. He was an absolute highlight reel a minute when he was at UMass, and he came in, sort of surprised people, made the roster that first year, did a great job, and then got banged up and hurt. And now we're in that year 2 where it was this big moment to sort of break on through and be that other guy opposite Davis. I think his inclusion there was what helped them move on from some of the vets. But he's been banged up again, so it's sort of that, it's the window thing. Think of it a little like the Jacob Hollister situation here. Jacob is so tantalizing. He's going to be able to do something if he can ever just be on the field for a consistent amount of time. I think of Tajay that same way. Like if you get in game now in the event that he plays, and he has some highlight one-handed catch, and you say, whoa, where did this guy? No, don't be surprised about that. He's that kind of player. He just hasn't been a volume guy for them yet. And I think it's not so much about the receiver alone, it's the quarterback as well. The quarterback isn't the guy that can drop back 40 times and hit 32 or 33 of those balls. They just don't put it on his shoulders that way.
Okay, so we are here. I love Nashville. I would have loved to have gone to Nashville.
It's a great place.
Country music. No, who cares? It's still Nashville.
But did you see there was a lot of griping online. Not griping. There's a ton of Patriots fans down there, by the way.
Yeah.
But the weather. They were saying it was actually cooler there today than it is here in Foxborough.
Well, it is it is a very nice Watertown. It's a nice day here, but I think we should still talk to our bosses about being there, even though.
I want to stay.
We have 2 friends who are there. You might know them.
More than 2 friends.
Well, yes, but 2 friends that we're going to hear from right now: Doug Hyde and Zach Cox in Tennessee. Here we go.
Thanks, Courtney. Let's talk about some of the old friends on the Titans squad, namely cornerback Malcolm Butler, who is having a pretty rough season. 8 games into his Titans career, he's let up 7 touchdowns, only has 1 interception. He's allowed the most yards for any cornerback in the NFL, the most catches out of any cornerback in the NFL, and the most touchdown passes. So certainly not a great start for Butler, but all the Patriots are still talking him up. So I'm actually really curious to see how the Patriots go after Malcolm Butler, because their other options are another former Patriot, Logan Ryan, who they've also praised this week, and Adoree Jackson. So you would think that they probably will heavily go after Malcolm Butler, at least early in this game.
That is what you would think, and this Patriots team, too, is a team that knows Malcolm Butler better than any other team in the NFL. They know his shortcomings, they know his strengths, and, I mean, like you said before, I'm just surprised that how poor Malcolm Butler has played this season, because he wasn't great last year. Last year was easily his worst year as a Patriots starter, but he still led the team in pass breakups, played almost every defensive snap, was still a solid NFL starter. And now he looks like the worst quarterback in the NFL. So I don't know what's going on with him. Mike Vrabel has said it's some pretty basic mistakes that he's making, just mistakes in man coverage, just really like technique-based things that you wouldn't expect an experienced NFL veteran cornerback to be making. On one hand, the fact that these mistakes are so simple, you think, oh, he changes one thing, then he'll be fine. But on the other hand, it's 10 weeks into the season, he's still making these mistakes.
Yeah, absolutely. And Butler's struggles really kind of started last preseason. He was really bad for the Patriots last preseason. Those struggles continued into the season. And obviously, as many of you know, and if you don't, you might want to rewatch the game. Malcolm Butler was benched in the Super Bowl. Patriots did not re-sign him, signed a big deal with the Titans. But on the other side of the field, Patriots cornerback Stephon Gilmore is having a massive season, and I think everyone expects him to match up against Corey Davis, the Titans' #1 receiver, in this game, and that definitely seems like a mismatch to me.
Yeah, I mean, Stephon Gilmore is having an excellent season. He's really shut down each of the last 4 wide receivers he's gone against, and those are some pretty good names on that list, guys like Devontae Adams, guys like Allen Robinson. But even more so, on the other side of the field, Jason McCourty is having a very good season for the Patriots, and he's making a whole lot less money than Malcolm Butler is. So it's basically been a Butler for McCourty swap ever since McCourty took over for Eric Rowe earlier in the season, and the Patriots are really making out on the better side of that deal right now.
Definitely, Patriots secondary has been a strength. Their defense has been a strength for the last few weeks now. Titans offense, on the other hand, definitely struggling a little bit. Marcus Mariota only has 5 passing touchdowns all season, has 5 interceptions to go along with that. Titans are 4-4 heading into this matchup. Patriots are 7-2. So this one's probably a little bit more important for the Titans, because a win means a winning record, a loss means a losing record, and they're kind of in the same situation that the Packers were heading into last week's game against the Patriots. So definitely an important game for the Titans, but Patriots are obviously favored in this matchup. I expect them to win. Do you expect them to win?
I do. I think it'll be a close game. Every Titans game this season has been kind of a drag-out rock fight. I'm expecting something similar, but I do expect the Patriots to win by at least a touchdown.
Rock fight. I like that. All right, back to you guys.
Great stuff from Zach and Doug. Beautiful foliage in Nashville. Honestly, stunning.
I don't know what they said. I was just looking at the tree scene.
Yeah, they looked great. They looked great.
It was a really nice
Follow
shot.
along with them during the game at Doug Kide and at Zach Cox NESN. We're running heavy because Matt loves to talk. So let's jump right into it.
Called me heavy. That's all I heard.
Yeah.
Just called me heavy.
Gosh, enough. Keys to the game. Let's start with offense.
Offensively, we've kind of already touched on this, but I really think it's handling whatever manipulation, pocket manipulation that Vrabel comes up with. He's going to put his focus there and maybe dropping all the guys. Drop all 11, right? Or next minute it's crossing something up over center, picking a guard, something like that. We go into this game knowing Shaq Mason's not playing. Another big factor here is Trent Brown, who hasn't practiced all week with an illness. Matthew Slater pops up on the injury report the other day, Saturday I believe it was, for the illness as well. Something was going through the locker room. Why that matters on an offensive key, we expect Trent Brown to play, but in the event that he does play, and say the Patriots want to go up tempo like we've seen them do a lot, that's a way to take out the pocket manipulation. If Vrabel wants to do crazy stunts, you can't get crazy stunts off if you're back up at the line, play after play after play quickly. Hard to go tempo though if you got a sick 6'8", 300 and God knows what tackle. So that's a factor in this game. If he struggles or he's not able to go long drives and they got to substitute someone in, we haven't seen that throughout this year. So I think that's something to kind of temper expectations. We're not so sure Gronk's going to be involved. The tackle situation's an illness thing. Right guard, Shaq Mason's down again, but Ted Karras has done a nice job. I just think they need to handle the chaos, avoid the negative plays, deal with all the distractions because there's going to be a lot.
We were down in Gillette this week, so hopefully we don't come down with any type of flu or anything that might be going through the locker room. Now keys to the game for defense.
Defensive keys, for me, it's really big on minding the red zone tendencies. If you look really hard at Tennessee, they struggle to score. You don't have to look hard to see that. But when you have a team that struggles to score, but they're actually good at some element of scoring, you have to be mindful of that. It might be a little bit confusing. What that means is They're going to arrive in the red zone sometimes. They're pretty efficient down there, and if you look at their personnel, they actually have people who work pretty well in that area of the field. Mariota, it may not be great out on the other 40 taking it down and running it in, but when the area is constricted and the coverage is all, everyone's backs are turned, he's pretty good. Get him down inside the 20, him taking off. Dion Lewis, if you see the Patriots give up an angle route or a screenplay like they did in Dallas, a red zone screenplay that just walks into the end zone, that would have been poor scouting. You have to know Davis is pretty much the only receiver you got to worry about down there, and Mariota taking off, and an offense that wants to run it in. They'll literally go 2nd and 9, where they only got a yard on first down, and they'll run it again. They would much rather run the thing in. They don't like to take shots into the end zone much. The passes are more short and, run it in, catch and run kind of plays. And then the backs. You got to concentrate on the backs. So I think this is really a game where the tendencies are strong enough, the preferences are strong enough that the Patriots aren't going to be really overly concerned about yardage, 30 to 30. It's more once you enter that high red, really taking care of the best things they do, and there ain't a whole lot more there. I think this is an offense that with the questions they had at wide receiver that we talked about earlier, it's going to make it pretty tough for them to get beyond their average, to be a plus 20 kind of team.
Okay, last but certainly not least, help the people at home make some money. Chatham's choice for this week.
If you've been watching the show and taking children's tuition and putting it towards our recommendations week after week, you've done quite well. So maybe you've moved out of the state, you bought that island, we want to bring you back here. Hopefully you're getting a signal out there wherever you are. But it's been a good year for us, and I want you to continue to win. I want you to go after the point total this week. I expect the Titans, have played in a lot of tough, ugly games this season. They tend to bring teams down in the mud. It's sort of like Buffalo, but with a better offense, slightly better offense. Buffalo's offense is just abysmal. This is a lower tier offense, but that can still do some things. For that reason, I'm a little worried about that 6.5 spread. If you feel like a spread bet, clearly I think the Patriots should be the favorite, but it's plausible that it ends up being a 6-point game, so I don't want you to lose cash. I'd rather you win. Let's roll with the point total, and for that we're going to go under. Because the Titans have had some questions, as I mentioned, at their wide receiver positions. You take a modest scoring offense, you bring it down a notch with some question marks of their own, and you take the Patriots with their own offensive uncertainties. The tight end may be gone again, some offensive question marks because the lineman guys are up and down. Michelle back, but maybe not at a full roll. Josh Gordon not on the injury list, but he does have a dislocated finger. You get a drop or two out there that might cost you points. You don't want that. So I think at a safer day, you go with the kind of style of game that Tennessee ends up in, which is the more muddy stuff. Under that 47 will make you some more money this week again.
You sold that.
I did.
Good job. We did it.
We did it. Next, I'll be selling vacuum cleaners and ShamWow.
All right. Well, that will do it for this episode. Enjoy your NFL Sunday.
Do it.
Thanks for tuning in. Great stuff from Matt, obviously.
Best stuff from Courtney. I gotta
honestly,
be.
Thank you.
Amazing.
But we did it. We made it through.
We did.
Enjoy your NFL Sunday. Game time is 1 o'clock in Nashville. Go Pats. Hopefully we get another win under our belt.
It's a nooner out there. Those are crazy. When you wake up and it's 12 o'clock
He can't
and you
stop
go to a football
talking.
game. Yeah.
Yep. That's it.
Next show.
Bye.
Bye.